บีคอนโดชีวิตทันสมัยมีสไตล์ในแบบของคุณ Be Happy คือความสุขที่อยู่รอบตัวคุณ Be Smart เป็นสไตล์ในแบบคุณ Be Healthy อยู่ท่ามกลางความสดชื่นได้ทุกวันราคาเริ่มต้น 1,140,000 บาทสนใจดูรายละเอียดได้ที่ www.abasestate.co.th
ไม่มีวิกฤตไหนที่คนไทยเอาชนะไม่ได้เพราะคนไทยสร้างสรรค์ไม่ว่าจะเกิดอะไรขึ้นคนไทยก็ยังยิ้มสู้เพราะความใจสู้ของคนไทยเป็นกำลังใจให้กลุ่มปตท.มุ่งมั่นคิดเพื่ออนาคตและทำสิ่งที่ดีที่สุดเพื่อคนไทย
แน่หนาวก็ไม่ใช่ทำไมอากาศดีแต่โชคยังดีมีลีโอติดตู้เย็นมีตู้เย็นลีโอติดตู้เย็นแจกฟรีลำโพงแม่เหล็กสุดชิลติดตู้เย็นจากลีโอร่วมสนุกได้จนถึงวันที่31ธันวาคม2564เท่านั้นมีโซดาลีโอติดตู้เย็นไว้
ชิลทุกวัน
ความชิลติดตู้เย็นรวมกันมันกว่าโซดาลีโอคำว่าดีที่สุดหยุดเขาไม่ได้ New Fortuner Legender สัญลักษณ์แห่งความสำเร็จสัมผัสและทดลองขับวันนี้ที่โชว์รูมโตโยต้าทั่วประเทศ
อังคารที่ 3 สิงหาคม 15 นาฬิกาพบกับคุยทุจอ Fact Talks ช่วงพิเศษ On Tuesday the 3rd of August at 15 hours Bangkok time we ask you to join and meet Her Excellency Sin Maong Minister of Foreign Affairs National Unity of Government NUG from Myanmar Dr. Emma Leslie and Executive Directors Center for Peace and Conflict Studies supporting peace processes across the Asia region and Mr. Martin McInmarco an Asia Regional Correspondent Nikkei Asia talked about upcoming ASEAN Ministerial meeting in Brunei. Don't ever miss us. We see you there. พลาดไม่ได้นะครับพบกันครับ
Dr. Emma Leslie, since you've been in Cambodia for 22 years and become Cambodian citizens eventually. So what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do with the Myanmar crisis? It has been going on for over 6 months now. And about the junta government, what can you do with them to bring about the peace process across the Asian region, particularly inside Myanmar, please?
Thank you so much for the question, and I believe Excellency Zumaong has joined us now. But I want to say that I think the most immediate crisis for us in the region is, of course, the extreme COVID outbreak in Myanmar, but equally countries like Thailand and Cambodia working so hard to try and make sure that we reduce the number of people who have COVID. So despite whatever political complexity we're facing in Myanmar, and of course, Myanmar is not just a conflict or a complex political situation inside the country, but also for the region. But right now, I think we as an ASEAN family, as an ASEAN community, really need to drill down in making sure that we respond to that COVID crisis, not just for the people of Myanmar to show them how we care for them, but equally for the people of Thailand and for the rest of the region. We need to make sure we contain it and that we find creative and pragmatic and non-political ways to respond to that.
Okay, that's good. Now, I believe Her Excellency Sin Maong, Minister of Foreign Affairs from National Unity Government, has just joined us. So I'd like to get the attention to Her Excellency. But before that, before the questions goes on, let me give you a brief historical of Her Excellency. She's now Minister of Foreign Affairs from National Unity Government, Republic of the Union of Myanmar. She participated in the 10th anniversary of 1988 revolution and the movement to release the arrested students. In the same year, she also organized the movement to respect the 1990 election results and summoned the parliament. She was arrested after that and sentenced to 28 years in prison. Hard work. After spending 11 years at prisons, she was released on 18th September 2009, which is 11 years later. After release, she resumed the political activities. In 2012, she was awarded the International Women of Courage Award by the United States Secretary of State, at that time probably Hillary Clinton, if I'm correct. In 2014, she was nominated for the World Global Leader 2014 for the World Economic Forum in 2014. She also participated as a fellow in the Reagan Fellow of Democracy, fellow of the National Endowment for Democracy Program. In 2015, she contested in the 2015 general election and elected as parliamentary member of the Yangon Township. She was also a member of the Social Affairs Committee of the 21st Century Annual Conference. She was General Secretary of the Central Women Committee of the National League for Democracy, NLD. She was also a country representative for ASEAN Women Peace Registries. Currently, she is UNG Foreign Minister of the National Unity Government, NUG. And it's my pleasure to welcome you once again, Excellency. Well, Excellency Zin, let me just call you first name, Excellency Zin. The question is that the past Monday, there's a news from good source saying that U.S. dismissed Myanmar election plan by the junta and urges ASEAN pressure over dismissal of Myanmar election plan and urge ASEAN to appoint a special envoy. So what do you think, what are your ideas about this? It is going to be very helpful to National Unity Government, NUG, on your sides, please.
Okay, thank you to the Fact Talk team for inviting me to this talk show, and I would like to express my appreciation. Thank you also for the question, because the people of Myanmar, the conflict and the issue that we have seen with the people of Myanmar and the military junta is that after the 2020 election, the election which was reported by the international observers and local observers as a free and fair election, despite the results of the free and fair election in the general election in 2020, despite the public recognition, despite the recognition of the international observers, and despite the elected parliamentarians who have already been issued certificates or the recognition by the Union Election Commission. But once we were in Naypyidaw to start our very first parliamentary session, Myanmar has seized the power, and they had committed the coup d'etat. And the fact that he just recently announced that he is going to organize a free and fair election, we will not accept his elections, because we had organized free and fair election, internationally recognized, and we have local observers, and even Myanmar himself participated in that election and voted for the parties he supported. And he also have publicly claimed that he will accept the vote and the will of the people. And yet, according to the election laws, according to the way the election has taken place, the results of the past election is still valid for us. So it is the will of the people. It is the result of the election. So we are continuing with the result of the 2020 election. We will not accept, or do not trust, or will not acknowledge the election that the military junta will organize in the future. As to the 5-point essence of ASEAN and that appointment of the special envoy, well, that dated from back in April. it's been months, and we have issued our statement to welcome the ASEAN 5-point consensus, as well as on the decision to appoint the ASEAN envoy. We have sent a letter to the ASEAN as well as to the ASEAN member states, and we also have highlighted that ASEAN 5-point consensus is missing a few important points. Because we are part of the ASEAN family, and we are willing to, as part of the ASEAN family, we are willing to engage with the ASEAN and ASEAN mechanism, and we are we have been reaching out to the ASEAN to express our willingness to cooperate. However, the military taking over power by force in Myanmar is a clear violation of ASEAN Charter. If you look at the ASEAN Charter, if you read paragraph by paragraph, line by line, that shows clearly that there's a violation of the ASEAN principles and the ASEAN Charter. That's what is stated in the ASEAN Charter. Is a clear violation, showing that violation of the ASEAN principles and ASEAN values. It is important for ASEAN to ensure that member states comply with and follow the ASEAN standards and ASEAN Charter, because ASEAN needs to have an accountable mechanism on its member state to ensure that they follow and comply with the ASEAN Charter. That's what I like to respond to your first question. So thank you.
Well, in corresponding to your statements just now, what do you think the appointment of special envoys in the ASEAN ministerial meeting could do something about it, even put the pressure on junta government? Can NUG become legitimate in the administrations over Myanmar from then on? If special envoy is appointed, you think this could do something about bringing the situation better inside Myanmar? I'm not talking about the vaccination problems inside Myanmar, because we are not that good as well. So please comment on
that. For me, to be open and direct, I don't think so. Because, to appoint a special envoy, although it was decided in the ASEAN summit back in April, it's been May, June, July, now we are in August. In the past 3 months, ASEAN, we have many lives have been lost due to the hunter, many have been detained arbitrarily, many have been killed, and that happened before the ASEAN envoy was finally appointed, and that we are also hearing that ASEAN envoy will be appointed very soon. But the political crisis in Myanmar is very complex, and the attitude of the military hunter, their position, and that will the special envoy will be able to change the mindset and attitude of the military hunter, I'm quite doubtful about that.
Well, so if that the case, what measures, in your view, could be taken over Myanmar crisis to resolve the crisis in Myanmar? If special envoy appointment may be not workable to your view, what else could be taken? There are strong measures to go against the junta government and let the NUG become legitimate over the administrations in Myanmar.
I
would like to, I think the question will need to be answered in 3 parts. First, the appointment of the ASEAN envoy. That appointing the ASEAN envoy will ASEAN be able to recognize this officially is that we have asked ASEAN to invite us to the ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting we have asked that, but we haven't received any reply, no response from the ASEAN, and that I'm not talking about the different relationship we have with the different member states of the ASEAN. We are talking about the ASEAN as institution, regional institution. They have responded to our letter requesting to be invited to the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. The first one. Second point is, what can we do with the appointment of the ASEAN envoy, and if nothing is happening, nothing is doing, that's being done. The coup the coup d'etat in Myanmar is not just about Myanmar, because it has also have implication across the world. It also have implication across the region. Even inside the ASEAN region, it has become a hot topic to be discussed, because right now with the pandemic, we should be focusing on prevention and the control of the COVID-19. Because of this unnecessary and unwarranted the coup d'etat in Myanmar, we are facing extra hardship, and that we can also see clearly in Myanmar that many of the state institutions have collapsed. If you look at it from the public health perspective, for the region that without the proper governance, without the systematic governance, will not be able to control the COVID-19 pandemic contained in Myanmar. It will have an implication throughout the entire implications or the consequences to the other members of the other countries. Our neighboring countries like India, China, Thailand will see a lot of negative impact from it. Because of the COVID-19 crisis and lack of governance and lack of proper structure, there will also be other impacts to stability as well. So that's why NUG government, we are willing to engage with the international community, with my neighboring countries. We're looking at the different options. How can we work together with different stakeholders to be able to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic? So on the one hand, we have movement in Myanmar like the CDM, so this will be their movement, as well as a protest against showing the people's commitment and against the military dictatorship. We are also providing public service as part of the NUG. There are limitations, but we are using our own capacity to provide response and services to the people. That's what will be continuing to provide services. But ASEAN alone will not be able to change the attitude of the military. I don't think ASEAN alone will be able to put sufficient pressure on the military to change their position. It is important that UN is important, that ASEAN member states is important, that ASEAN that allied countries will need to work together to put pressure on the military.
So from what I heard, that ASEAN pressure is slim to none. I hate to say that. From what I heard, it's barely chance to put the pressure on Myanmar junta. What if the US pressure and the EU pressure, could that be a great deal of resolving the crisis in Myanmar? If we switch to United Nations, EU pressure and the US pressure, would it be workable? Dr. Zesi, you prepared to answer that? Well, it could be, because it's a conflict study. Okay.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the situation in Myanmar is very complex. So there's not going to be one solution to trying to resolve this. And certainly back in April, ASEAN was able to set the bar very high on what we thought was a great way forward. There were some consensus points. For ASEAN, it was a significant moment in really trying to work out how to be pragmatic. And we saw incredible leadership from people like Foreign Minister Retno, who really mobilized. She went to China, she went to Japan, she's met with the Russian foreign minister. So I think we have to acknowledge the foundation which ASEAN was able to build around this situation. I think what I hear Excellency Zim Mahong expressing is the frustration that those consensus points haven't yet been realized, and that the population of Myanmar is really in the most extreme circumstances now. And not just because of the violence, but also because the lack of infrastructure, a lack of functioning governance means that people are not getting vaccines, they're not getting PPE, they're not getting masks. So in response to your question, the United States is definitely part of the solution. China is part of the solution. India is part of the solution. Bangladesh. Most certainly Thailand, and we're really looking to Thailand for ongoing leadership and support. And we know a number of Thai leaders who are really trying their best to work out how to navigate the diplomatic challenges here, but equally to care about people. And I think that's what we have to get back to, is that every country in our region has to prioritize this. And we have to treat it not as just two entities. This is not Tatmadaw versus NUG. There are so many stakeholders here. And I think one of the things that we've seen to be very positive coming out of the last few months is the efforts of the National League for Democracy, the parliamentary group that formed CRPH, the NUG government, to partner and to work with many of the leading ethnic organisations in the country. So the Kachin, the Karen, the Chin, they have all been, and many others, the Shan, it's dangerous not to mention everybody, but I think there's been a serious effort of people trying to come together and work out what is the way forward here. Because there's not a singular path and there's not an easy way forward. But there definitely is something that trumps everything else, and that's dialogue. And dialogue always means people coming together and listening deeply to each other and trying to find ways through. And I think that's something that we've seen happening over these last 4 months, nearly 6 months, is a genuine effort of the other stakeholders in the country. And I think the danger is if ASEAN treats this as a Tatmadaw versus NLD problem, we will miss the opportunity to see what a federal democracy looks like. How do we solve the root causes of this problem in Myanmar, not just the surface level? And I think appointing an envoy would be an excellent first step, but it's not the only step. And it means definitely a more complex strategy has to evolve from there.
One more question before I go to Mr. Marwan. Let me ask you, what do you think, what do you see as the root cause of Myanmar crisis presently?
I think
even they have the ethnic armed forces to join in the NUG, but still they have to work very hard to overcome such obstacles.
I mean, certainly Myanmar is a country. We always just have to go back to the fact that Myanmar is the centerpiece of our region. I mean, off the shore of Myanmar is some of the biggest gas deposits we see in our whole region. You know, Saudi oil runs through Myanmar to China. So Myanmar is rich resourced, and that means everybody wants a part of Myanmar. So that's an issue. We know that when you're rich resourced, then of course there are many stakeholders who want to control those resources, including military, businesses and stakeholders. We know that it is ethnically and religiously diverse. So in any conflict in the world, when we combine huge resources and ethnic and religious diversity, that's very likely to produce a lot of complexity and conflict. So actually what we need is a system in Myanmar which does allow for accountability of government, that is transparent about the resources that are being utilised, that shows the people how not just their taxes, but their land and their resources are being used. And I think that's what we're struggling through here. And I think what's extraordinary is some of the benchmarks, even around citizenship for Rohingyas, has been set in these last months. Now, the challenge is how to deliver on those things. And I think the COVID crisis is an opportunity for us all to be able to deliver to the people of Myanmar. After we've addressed the COVID crisis, we can move further down the pathway, I think, to being able to settle some of the other issues. But I think what the NUG and the CRPH, the NLD, the ethnic armed organisations, civil society, the civil disobedience movement are all saying we need a different future for our young people and it can't continue like this. And I think that's the primary message here. The politics is always politics and we need to get into it. But we have to hold on to both root causes and the big vision, the big possibility here for what kind of Myanmar could emerge.
Well, in other words, point is to solve complexities, as you said, inside Myanmar. Now, Mr. Questions to Mr. Mon. He's ready to join us now. He's been sitting there listening for a while, and sorry to keep you waiting. As well to Ambassador Batsa as the regular commentator. Mr. Marwan, That's 27 years as journalist, your career, and you catch up with the ASEAN ministerial meeting presently. Since the special envoy appointment may not be applicable to resolve the crisis in Myanmar, what more, as a recipe, what more ingredients you think you have to add up to make this special envoy workable?
It is always good to be kept in mind that ASEAN, despite its claims to be a representative organization for the people of the region, essentially is a club of the government leaders. It's an organization that supports the states, partly because there is no common thread based on values, shared values that everybody, say, subscribes to. Like, say, human rights, for instance. This region has military governments, it has communist party governments, it has monarchies, it has democracy. So the political values are different. So what it's all about protecting the leadership of those countries and protecting the states. That is why when ASEAN talks of non-interference, it's a way of ensuring that these existing leaders are protected in their politics. So the first challenge in response to your question is, the army Minong Lang, who now is under the junta, has essentially said he's somewhat warm to the nominee from Thailand. Yes. However, whether former Deputy Foreign Minister Virasak's name is going to be approved or not is still open for question. Now, it is since April that the idea of a special envoy's name was floated.
At this point in time, do you think they have selective nationalities to represent as a special envoy to Myanmar, appointed by the ASEAN members? They have
there are at least three nominees on the table. Maybe there could be four. But essentially, I mean, ASEAN has promised that the special envoy is their first contact point to engage with Myanmar. And ASEAN has raised the political stakes that it hopes to deliver to deal with the Myanmar problem through the special envoy. But we must remember something. The military government is not an easy organization to deal with. I mean, just take your mind back to what happened after Cyclone Nargis, when the former dictatorship under General Tan Shwe was around. I mean, tens of thousands of people were dying, and the government was reluctant to open up for humanitarian assistance. It was only the good officers of former Thai Foreign Minister, the late Surin Pitsuwan, was able to navigate through these choppy waters and established a humanitarian bridge between Don Mueang Airport and the airport of Myanmar to get aid through. So sometimes the generals crack, but as of now, General Minong Lang has not cracked, and he has appointed himself to the self-appointed prime minister over the weekend, where there is no even constitutional clause. So he's happily reinforcing that he's the man in charge, and whether ASEAN can deal with him or not is the big question.
Now he's appointed as a prime minister of Myanmar.
He appointed himself.
What about through international recognition? Is that?
Well, this is all a strategy for him to gain international recognition because he's the coup leader. He's a junta leader. He's a strong man. But one way of softening that image is to appoint himself as a prime minister. But it would be foolish of countries around the world to recognize him as a prime minister because there's no legitimacy to that position.
That's what I'm going to ask. How's that echoed by the international voices after he appointed himself as a prime minister?
We have to wait and see. That just happened on Sunday. We are just 2 days into this. I mean, whether he thinks that just because he made himself a prime minister with no constitutional clauses or no electoral legitimacy, whether others are going to invite him to the table. That you have to wait and see.
I see. So there's no more ingredients to add on to make this special envoy workable, as opposed by the U.S. Advice to put pressure on appointed special envoy, right?
I mean, I'm sure conflict resolution experts might look at it in a positive light. Like, okay, so he has accepted former Deputy Foreign Minister Virasak as his man for the job. Okay, well, why not work with that and see where it can go? Because I think there's a lot of politicking and infighting within ASEAN as to which country's nominee is going to be the special envoy. So they want to sort of satisfy their own political objectives and let Myanmar hang.
So, well, coming to questions to former Ambassador Kopsak, since you have overall view about the international arena, international affairs, even has attended UN meetings for quite some time. What do you think about the special envoy appointment? May not be workable or may not be workable at this point in time. Can you give the overall views on this issue?
Well, yes. Well, yesterday there was a meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers virtually, chaired by Brunei. Apparently, according to some reports, the ASEAN foreign ministers spent 5 hours discussing the appointment of a special envoy,
Right.
and reached no conclusion. They could not agree. So that indicates some basic contradictions and constraints within the ASEAN mechanism. You asked whether there could be ingredients added to the special envoy concept. I would say that the special envoy idea has become a red herring. We cannot add anything more to it. No chili, no pepper, no salt or anything. And we should really start even to move away from it. Why? Because, well, first of all, 3 months ago, as Dr. Emma said, it was a good idea. Initiated by Foreign Minister Retno, President Jokowi, but it was part of a package, a 5-point consensus. Now we are pulling it out and trying to use it as a litmus test of progress, of how dialogue, how reconciliation, how new arrangements, how even democracy can be restored. But that's putting too much on just one element of a special envoy. So that's become a red herring, and we're spending a lot of time on that. 5 hours yesterday discussing who should be the special envoy when people are falling on the streets, in the hospitals, the pandemic raging in Myanmar. So that is a different priority now. We have to move away from that, as Dr. Emma said. We cannot remain focused only on that. It sort of now become something that tantalizing, even from the press. Now one can testify. People just follow this question. We have been discussing now for 1 hour on special envoy, and there's nothing moving. Mr. Mawan said Min Online has agreed, and he is in favor of the Thai candidate, my good friend Mr. Virasak. But in some senses, that's the kiss of death. For the other ASEAN countries, and then people would have to ask, why did they go for the Thai guy? And all those the kind of reservations of, again, whether you will be pushing the 5-point consensus, which is the dialogue, which is democracy, which is release of political prisoners. So that is implied.
Mr. Kopsak, could you give us on the five elaborates of that? Elaborates on 5 consensus.
Yeah. Well, that's the one element is humanitarian aid. Of the 5, actually, it's only 4, because two of the 5 talks about special envoy. So that's special envoy takes two of the points already, and then the health, and then the speaking to all parties, and and all that. So and a ceasefire was perhaps also in there. There was another element to be put in that release of political prisoners, but I think Min Aung Hlaing did not agree to that, so it became 5. So those are the elements. But again, people talking about 5-point consensus, 5-point consensus, and as you say, not many people can reel them out. What are they? And the pity is that it become reduced only to special envoy. That's the only tangible thing that people can take a hold of. But that, I feel, is distracting. Efforts, time. We don't have time to lose. We are becoming almost like, ASEAN has become like Emperor Nero, playing the fiddle while Rome burns. ASEAN is becoming like NATO, no action, talk only. But the difference is that NATO has guns, and it still has military power. So we are sliding down that slippery slope if we don't just pick ourselves up and say, hey, look, we have another crisis on our hands this whole week of meetings. But we have to also understand some of the constraints of ASEAN. Mr. Marwan has said already, it's made up of a whole host of different kinds of countries, not like European Union, and basically the same, liberal democracies and democratic countries, and they can move basically together. But even in the European Union, there are, before they can arrive at some decision, it takes a long time. But now the new challenge also is that we are meeting online like we are doing now. ASEAN in the past, most of the agreements were reached on the golf course, I would say, among, shaking hands, among a sense of camaraderie. But now that is impossible. There's no corridor talk, and people have to express themselves openly, their stated position on the screen like this, in front of everybody else. And another basic contradiction within ASEAN is that, all these meetings of ASEAN meeting other countries, ASEAN meeting among themselves, ASEAN meeting the US, the Myanmar representative is sitting in. And if ASEAN works on consensus, the Myanmar person has to agree to everything too.
I see.
So those are the basic contradictions. At the same time, some of the countries who say, they don't like the junta, they don't like the SAC, they don't like this new government, but this week they will be sitting in on these webcasts, on these Zoom meetings, webinar and all that, with the junta representative also there in the room, in the chat room. So if they are brave enough, they should say, no, we would not accept this. We will not join in this. If you, from the ASEAN, bring along these people from a junta that stage a coup, or at the very least to say, we need Minister Sin with us to express the other point of view, to express the point of view of the majority of the Myanmar people who elected their representatives just 6 months ago, and why their voices are not being heard. So that within ASEAN, they should say, okay, look, let's have a session and invite, it's easy to do. Minister Sin could be there, and in one of these slots on the web to present the views of the majority of the Myanmar people and the ethnic groups also. So that could move the process forward. But again, the concern, the worry is that we are now reduced to waiting for somebody to be appointed, or a group of people to be appointed as ASEAN envoys.
I agree with you.
as the only test of progress.
I do agree with you. It has to go on. It has to be done simultaneously to cope with the COVID-19 situation, vaccination process, problems, and the selected special envoy to solve such crisis. I think this would be they have to be done simultaneously. But now let me ask the Minister, Mr. Sin. Excuse me for asking these questions. I'd like to find out whether it's possible. You can ask General Min online to come to a negotiating table and lay down all the facts and problems and negotiate with them to under special circumstances, COVID-19, I would say is a warning. It's the declare war on disease, COVID-19. Is it possible for those two of you, between junta, government, and NUG, to talk this seriously and to overcome the COVID-19 crisis before anything else? It sounds like the Myanmar, the whole Myanmar, join hands to get it over with, the COVID-19. And I would say, in Thailand, we also very much worried about the influx of the Myanmar refugees. Once there's starting political unrest, and while the COVID-19 is still spreading all over Thailand, we also have a serious problem as well about the COVID-19 spread. Do you think this could be negotiable between the two governments, junta and NUG? And once this crisis has been solved, I think we can get a lot of problems, bring down to negotiation table, and get this done over it afterwards, please.
Thank you for the question. Here, there are two important points, as Dr. Abner and other guests have explained. The political crisis of Myanmar is much more than that of political. Right now, we are facing human disaster. We are facing the disaster against the humanity. We are facing the pandemic in the war situation. So therefore, the NUG, either we engage with the military, either we talk with the military. We are elected by the people. We have the responsibility to respond to this humanitarian crisis. So we have established the National Commission on the Prevention and Control of Coronavirus. We have established this commission to respond to the COVID-19. So after we have formed this commission, we have also established COVID-19 prevention task force, especially in the ethnic control areas. We are working in collaboration with the ethnic armed organizations based on border. So we are working on the task force. Just to add to that, in doing so, that Myanmar political divide is not new, it's not recent. Myanmar political divide has been there for many years, and we're just trying a short-term solution. We're just looking at the superficial way, and that's why we are having this kind of recurrent coups happening again and again. They have killed, in every time they're killing thousands of people, and then we try to find a way to engage with them. And now with the COVID-19, they're using COVID-19 as a weapon. By weaponizing COVID-19, they're killing thousands every week. Right now, so that they have seized, they are arresting all the people, all the activists, not just the activists, the families are being integrated, and some of the other parliamentary members who are in the NUG or who are not in the NUG, because either they're pro-military. If they are not pro-military, then they'll be arrested and detained and being killed in the interrogation center. It's happening everywhere on the ground, and they are still committing that. And that we are not going to offer to them that we want to talk and negotiate with them, because they are committing the violence. That it's because we're not talking with them about the COVID-19. We are not doing anything. That's why we have developed a proposal where we have and submitted to the UN agency we want the UN agency or any international organization to work as a third party. The third party will talk with the military hunter to work on the COVID-19 pandemic, and they will also be engaged with us. We have the CDM medical practitioner, we have professionals. We also even have programs like telehealth going on where the people can, for free, people can consult the doctors on the Telegram channel. We are also providing home service through the CDM. We are using secret channel. We are raising funds. With the funds we have that we were able to get masks as well as the medical equipment, oxygen concentrator, and we are providing assistance to the people of Myanmar, people in need through the NUG government. Because we are carrying out our priority confidential meeting. That's what we are working on across Myanmar right now. That we are also talking with the UN agency to get UN to step in to provide as a third party. So if a third party, an international organization, come in to talk and work with us in the EAO and the NUG control areas for the IDPs, and therefore also for the defectors to provide them with we have developed plans to provide them with the COVID-19 vaccination as well as for the COVID supplies and care. We are also even broadcasting in many different languages, and then we are also having talk shows and webinars for the people learn about to raise the public awareness of the education about the COVID-19. So despite the political complexity, how to resolve the political crisis, for us, we know what are the root causes. We also know what is the solution. How can we resolve this issue? We need to change the military discourse. We need to get rid of the military supremacy, and thus we need to have a genuine federal democracy, whose principles has been outlined in the federal democracy charter. We know the root causes, but we also have to address the problem. But right now, the problem is very deep-rooted. It's historical, so we will not be able to address it deeply. So for us, COVID is our first priority. It is not just Myanmar issue; it's a regional issue. It's a global issue. The transmission of Delta virus is very high in Myanmar. That's why we are looking into the COVID-19 for a way to do it. That we have to do it. That right now. That is also having some. That's why we're asking for the third party to resolve the issue. Is that okay? That is that for us. So we are also working on it as well. That also that's what we need to have. Third party come in to do third party, because for us it's very clear COVID-19 is our top priority right now. People are our first priority. We need to have a transparent. We want to have the principles we have is people first, and then we have transparency and that equivalent engagement. So we have submitted developed a proposal and we sent it to the UN agencies. We are also raising funds. We are also getting medical supplies, and we are using all the channels that we have, all the different channels to provide assistance to the people in need on the ground. But we also need I think that is something we need with the third party engagement in the COVID-19 crisis in Myanmar, and we are ready to engage with the third party.
Well, thank you for the answer. I believe that now the COVID-19 is has been prioritized to help the people of the Myanmar. So how many millions of Myanmar has been vaccinated so far? So in order to determine how soon you can overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. And even the assistance coming from many different channels, how much now and how much you get assistance from various channels that you just said, and is there any difficulty to deliver and to allocate to vaccine throughout the Myanmar states?
Question is to Excellency Zuma.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So So what we are be able to do now is that in KIA control area as well as in the Western area, China has donated vaccination and they are vaccinating the local people there. That's one of the channels that we're also see military hunter also have also doing some vaccination, but military that the people people refuse collaborate with the military. People don't trust the military to the extent that they won't go because you have to get the credentials and then the military can use it as a way to arrest people. Because people also feel that if we go and get the vaccination from the military military can say that people support us. We don't want to support them. That's why we're saying third party to go into the areas to establish 200 like we propose like 200 COVID vaccination send across Myanmar and do that. They will have raising funds and that military hasn't been able to do not even 1 million people vaccinated yet. And what we are proposing that we have a proposal, we are getting some support from like the Czech Republic. They want to donate vaccines, and then some of the countries have extra vaccines like US and other countries. Many countries have extra vaccines that if we can do that, they are ready to donate to us, but we don't have that without the implementation agency, a third-party implementation agency will not be able to do it. I don't know why the delay is happening. Work with the third party, we can get cross-border assistance. If we can, we have like in Thai border, we have many IDP camps, and we can get vaccination. We can even have developed the vaccine rollout plan for the IDPs. We can get the vaccine across the Thai border. If we get the time that we have already trained the people. We have the CDMers, we have the medical professionals. They are there. There are also ethnic health organizations that are ready to roll out immediately. What we need is that we have the countries ready to donate, and we have the medical teams, and we have the IDPs who are ready to roll out the plan. But the problem is in the logistic to get access to that. For the KIO area, they were in the Chinese border, so they'll be able to get from China directly, and they can do that in Chin from India, for example. If we can do that effectively, what we are missing is the cross-border permission to carry vaccination and medical equipment. If we want to, have to get all the medical equipment to Yangon International Airport and to reach out to the people in Myanmar, that's fine. We can do it. Everybody can do it. We also need also the access to the vaccine in the ethnic control area, especially along the borders, along the frontier border. These borders are entry points to our neighboring countries. We want to focus on this area because it is prevention not only for the people of Myanmar. We are also protecting the transmission of virus into Thailand, into China, into India. That's what we are trying to do. And that, China is supporting the ethnic organization to get vaccination to the EU area. So in KIO, they have established vaccine centers and they are doing a vaccine plan. That's what we need also around the Thai border, Indian border. We need cross-border collaboration. We are not looking into it as a political achievement. We are looking at it from the humanitarian assistance. It is a pandemic. It's a crisis, and we need to respond to the crisis from the humanitarian crisis. And that's what we are requesting humanitarian assistance from.
Well, what I understand in China, Chinese government are very influential to Myanmar at all times. And so I used to ask this question to Dr. Sasa, Minister of International Relations in UG, that have you all been trying to seek permission to speak to President Xi Jinping to get all these crises, political unrest, being solved in a peaceful means? I think that might be one of the positive approach to kill all the Myanmars, to bring down peace to Myanmar for the time being. I think that's probably the absolute way. It's just my point of view, because from what I see, that China has been has been donating millions and millions of vaccine doses. Okay, so I think China is very influential to Myanmar, even to junta government for the time being. And the second question I would like to ask is that if the system comes from the United States or even the EU, would be able to give access to those Myanmar citizens for right now, apart from Chinese assistance on the nation process, please. Minister Sim. So the minister has needed a translator. English. So please just wait for a moment. Please.
ဟုတ်ဝန်ကြီးဒီမှာသူမေးသွားတာကပေါ့နော်အခုလက်ရှိမှာ UN တို့ဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှိရင် EU တို့ကပေါ့လေတခြားနိုင်ငံလူတွေကခုနပြောတယ်တရုတ်ကသူကအဓိကပြောတယ်တရုတ်ကကူညီနိုင်မယ်တရုတ်နဲ့စကားပြောပြီးတာဆိုတဲ့ချက်ရဲ့ဒါဆဆာတော့တရုတ်နဲ့သူကအဲ့မေးထားစမရှိရင်မေးထားရှိတယ်လို့ပြောပါတယ် Sorry sir I'm just recapping the question right now and I will give her an
All right. Please continue.
To the first point, we are about China. We do have some engagement with China. It's not just China. We are reaching out to many countries around the world because of the since the very beginning, since a few months ago, we have reached out to the UN agency, international countries. There is a potential for humanitarian crisis in Myanmar. China is very concerned about the coup in Myanmar, and they know that this coup is no good for anyone. They are very clear about that. However, that although they haven't give state level kind of support, they are reaching out to some of our parliamentarians to provide COVID-19 that the supplies like PPE and masks and like medical supplies. They are also doing it on a small scale. They are supporting to their parliamentarians. They might also be China might also be engaging with the SA's military hunter as well. They are also providing medical supplies and assistance to the ethnic armed organization in the border areas too, so that we have regular contact. We also have a relationship with China. There is an urgent issue, like we also reach out to them. We also send them a note for the congratulatory note to the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. So that's part of our relation with China. So we are also reaching out to EU as well as on the UN and other countries, because by their political values and political standards, we have a democratic alliance, the democratic countries support us. So we are also engaging with the EU, US, and many other countries around the world. That's why in our proposal, that's why we say if there are also if other countries were to come in to help with the COVID-19, the other countries might also have their limitations that work with us. That's why we propose a third party, like a UN agency, like UNICEF or the UN or the Gavi for the Vaccine Alliance. Alliance can also work as an international institution as a third party. That's why we are engaging them, and that's why we have proposed these plans as option to work with them. Some of the UN agency also have concerns because they have to engage with their military, and they also don't want to be seen by the world as that they are working with the military. That also is their concern. We told them that it is very clear, make sure that they have equal engagement with not only with the military hunter, but also with the NUG, because we are looking beyond the politics, because people's needs and the public health crisis is the most important. So that's why we are saying that we are working with the engage with the third party. that and when the UN organizations have proposed the project to the military, they agree in principle, but however, in terms of implementation, there are also delays. So the implementation hasn't started yet. Just to update you on that.
Thank you, Minister. Now, I would like to ask this question to Dr. Imolis. Since you have heard long size, the situation in Myanmar, doubling by political unrest and COVID-19 pandemics, in terms of the peace and conflict studies, what do you think about this? Actually, it's worse than the situation in Myanmar, please.
Firstly, I think we have to stop calling it the situation in Myanmar. I think it's the situation in our region. And that's not just because of the situation between the Tamador and the NUG.
Okay, I agree. You said it affects it becomes the regional problems of the other ASEAN groups. Is that correct? Okay, please continue.
And your question is related to current theory and practice around conflict and peace. And I think we need to start recognizing that we don't live in the 1950s or 60s anymore. We live in 2021, and conflicts are always, we've touched on complex, but also systemic and very dynamic. And they change quickly, and they involve an economic part, they involve a humanitarian part, they involve geopolitics. There are a number of things that move very fast. And so our response to those conflicts has to also be different to the way that we've responded to things in the past. So while we appreciate, for example, the efforts of the UN envoy to try and mediate or create dialogues around this, actually one person and one envoy can't address all of the complex issues and factors and stakeholders that are in play here. So what we really need to be looking at is even just an ASEAN response is not enough, because only half of Myanmar is on ASEAN borders. The other half is on a Bangladesh, India, China border. So what we actually need to do is think bigger, but we also need leadership here. And I know Marwan mentioned the late Dr. Surin Pitsawan earlier, and the extraordinary ability he had to rise above all of this petty politics and he said, she said.
He's a great man, Dr. Surin Pitsawan, yes. Okay.
Indeed, so many.
Sorry, he just passed away.
Indeed. So he had an extraordinary ability to transcend a situation and see the people and put the people first. And I think that's what we're calling on ASEAN to do. The 5 consensus points, or I think of them as 3, were stop the violence. And there is a terrible attack going on the IDPs in KR State today. There are children hiding in a cave. And these are children who haven't had food for several days. They don't have access to medicines and, of course, are afraid of COVID, but are being bombarded right now. So stopping the violence is essential. Then humanitarian response, and, of course, we're looking forward to the AHA Centre and the UN and others who have the capacity to roll these things out, working together, partnering together. But also an envoy so that there's a focal point for conversation and dialogue, and for that envoy to be able to reach out to China and India and Bangladesh and the Arakanese Army and the Karen National Union, because it is difficult for a mechanism like ASEAN to try and decide on questions of recognition and credibility and who is the government that they should choose. An envoy is given a lot more freedom and a mandate to speak to all of the stakeholders. And right now, if the NUG government isn't allowed to speak in the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, then we need a means for the NUG to be able to communicate directly to ASEAN. So an envoy would create a channel for communication, a focal point for humanitarian response, but also a space for dialogue. If we can't get an envoy out of this meeting, we're going to need an eminent persons group. We're going to need leadership from various states to be able to take this forward. because this is an unsustainable situation. This is not.
You agree? Maybe one person may not be able to achieve what we need, what the whole world is.
In a post-World War II time when conflicts were usually even Aceh was between two entities, and it was easier for Atasari to come in and mediate two groups.
Probably they need joint cooperation to mediate, to remedy crisis. This is
and in the time of a global pandemic. I mean, all of us are having this call in lockdown and trying to work out where is Delta and how do we navigate that.
We have to work hand in hand. But maybe one point I'd like to bring up. If we expect China and India at the beginning, they're not really get along quite so well. They have some conflicts, as you may know. So probably if we rely on China to be influential, we probably have to let China. China is more economically strong than any other. I think even the US, China is now much stronger economically. So I think we probably have to rely on China. If we can talk them to President of China, I think this might be a good way out for the Myanmar to remedy the crisis. It's just my viewpoint. You have anything to add on, Dr. Leslie? Emma?
About China, I think it's absolutely essential that we be pragmatic about China, but that we continue to hold certain values. But China is the only country at the moment providing vaccines to Myanmar, and as we've seen, they didn't only provide vaccines to the Tatmadaw. They've also given vaccines to the Kachin Independent Army, who are then sharing it with others. So I think China already has a pragmatic approach. You would know that Yunnan province already suspended all other activities until COVID is combated in Yunnan province right now. So they're very serious, and the Yunnan government is serious about that. I think we need to see the United States and China put aside some differences around this particular humanitarian crisis in order to try and coordinate and work on it together, both in the Security Council but also bilaterally. And we know the complexity of issues in our region. We know South China Sea, we know Taiwan, we know all of these things. But fundamentally right now, we have to drill down and focus in on preventing a massive humanitarian crisis, not just for Myanmar, but for Thailand, for Cambodia, and for the rest of the region. We cannot economically or in human terms have a spread of Delta any further than it is, and we need to push it back and make sure that the people of Myanmar are also protected.
Yes, what happens in Myanmar, it affects the rest of the ASEAN members. That's totally correct, and I do agree. So, Mr. Owen, you have something to say about this? Now after Mr. Owen, please, Dr. Kamsa. Please.
So, I think Thailand has ample reason to worry because it is a frontline state. Because whatever happens in Myanmar invariably will affect Thailand first. Of course, keeping in mind that you have China that shares a border with Myanmar, Bangladesh, and India on the other side. But when it comes to the ASEAN family, Thailand is a frontline state, and it has more lose if the situation with an escalating humanitarian crisis worsens. I mean, we are talking about a worry of the Delta virus spreading, but given that the military government is not in complete control of the country, not in control of health institutions, and also there is growing discontent, we cannot rule out that Myanmar might see a rise of another strain of the COVID-19 virus beyond just Delta. And that is the reason for Thais to worry. There's a reason for Thais to worry about. And I can see why when it comes to ASEAN decision making, probably Thailand for its own national security and political security will have to pursue a two-pronged strategy. One is to satisfy ASEAN concerns, but the other is to satisfy Thailand's own concerns. And that's why I'm not surprised that the Thai military has continued to maintain regular and close contact with the Tatmadaw even since the coup, because they know, given past history, whatever happens in Myanmar will easily spill over across the border into Thailand.
I see. Ambassador Gobsa, as a Thai national, the crisis in Myanmar, I think we are very much concerned on 2 points. One for humanitarian aids, and one for the influx of Myanmar refugees. We have to also be worried about the widespread pandemic COVID-19, which we have to try to control or get this problem solved out, get this problem over with COVID-19. These 2 reasons, what do you think we should do as a Thai national, as a Thai government? Because we have 2 things to be very concerned with.
First of all, certainly, Thailand as a frontline country, a country with the longest border, 2,400 kilometers with Myanmar.
From north to south, right.
That gives it some legitimacy to have a strong voice into the equation. But that kind of frontline status and the long border sometimes is used as an excuse to say, look, we have this long border, we have so many relationships, a lot of interest with Burma, so we can't really do much. So that's an excuse to be sort of inactive, to be tied up because of varying concerns and worries and overlapping interests. So first of all, I think from the Thai side, we have to go beyond that and look at a comprehensive strategy approach of how we are going to approach this now. This is a new situation, a new crisis, unprecedented for everyone in the world, this pandemic crisis on our doorsteps. So all the old considerations, factors should be put to one side, and let's focus on this one and how to handle this situation. Humanitarian, certainly, but sometimes it's not even how many people come across or how many refugees will be coming across. You can see the Delta variant. How many refugees from India went over to England or to Europe or even to United States or to Australia or to Japan for this variant, this Delta variant, to overwhelm those countries, even though they have much better structures, medical structures, economic resources. So the threat is not only people coming across, you see, it's the contagion, it's letting this ball over, letting this, becoming, even turning into a new variant also. So those are the various concerns. That first of all, I think the Thai government should sit down, take a closer look. It's not only a security issue, medical, humanitarian as well. For Thailand, of course, when we deal with our own situation, we put the Secretary General of the National Security Council as a chairman. You notice, yes, so much more. Not the medical personnel and not all that. So it's the response has to be worked out properly. And then, of course, to use that in the ASEAN context, to how to get ASEAN to agree on some consensus, and maybe high-level intervention, not only to say senior officials leave to the ministers cannot agree, but again, now we need some high-level intervention at heads of state level, calling up each other, responding to President Jokowi, for example, responding to Lee Hsien Loong, for example, and try to work it out among themselves. That's also important. At the same time, I think I would support the point by Minister Sin Maung that they also need a third party. So we need an overarching mechanism also. ASEAN, after this week, should have to decide whether it should step back or step aside if they cannot deliver even on one tenet of the so-called five-point consensus, even naming a special envoy. If not, they have to say, look, the United Nations Security Council is due to me to assess what happened in the ASEAN meetings this week. So let them come up with something also, a mandate, international mandate. Let the UN Secretary General come, ASEAN to come, say, Mr. Secretary General, please come and lead the UN effort inside Myanmar. But at the same time, not to be fixated again on mechanisms and structures and processes, but support the idea of Dr. Emma that a patchwork approach, whoever can do what, where, and go in right away. Okay, if China wants to vaccinate the Kachins and all that, the Chins, good, the Wa, okay, the KNU, who's going to do that on the Thai border, going into that. And certainly, we cannot now throw the ball back to the NUG and say, why don't you speak with the junta? No, that is, we cannot throw that burden back to them. They are in the midst of a struggle. How would they face the young people who are risking their lives on the streets, who are dying on the streets in demonstrating against the government? So this is another context. It should not be mixed up with that. So international cooperation has to go in, and not on the premise that the NUG then has to talk with whatever government is set up by the junta. See, so those approaches, and it has to come within this week, because people are then still now. A lot of countries also say, okay, let the ASEANs work it out. They are there. They are in the region. They want to be the central players. ASEAN centrality. Okay. So I think ASEAN has to be honest with itself, look at itself in the mirror and say, hey, look, maybe this is beyond us. It's a new situation. We can say, okay, COVID situation, it's a medical emergency. Okay, let's bring everybody else in. Let's have a new approach. Go beyond the five-point consensus. That's not a text, a New Testament text, the 5 points that always have to be stuck with that. So we have to, again, this patchwork approach, I think that has been put forward by Dr. Emma, that yes, let's do this, and the NUG controls some territory, the ethnic groups control some territory, let's go in. Some of the medical facilities, infrastructure in the ethnic areas are still there working also. So we have to all realize that nobody is safe. This is the motto, the medical motto now. Nobody is safe unless everybody is safe. So we don't say, okay, you are this group, you are that group, we won't help you. But still we need a third party, I think. I would support Dr. and Minister Sin Maung that they need a third party mechanism to also go in the umbrella to organize things. And there could be no better than the United Nations because they are already there. And one final point, for example, what is this thing? I still don't understand why the special envoy needed to go in. And whether they can go in or not then becomes another matter, when they go in. When all the ASEAN countries have embassies in Yangon, those embassies, those ambassadors can form themselves into a group that engages everybody, engages not only junta, but invite Minister Sin Maung to the embassies for a reception, for dinner, for lunch, to chat, to dialogue. You see, and to engage civil society and be the channel for aid also to come in. ASEAN is already in there. Why do you try to get somebody, a special envoy, to go in? In 6 months' time, maybe they will be allowed to go in or given a visa to go in. Utilize that mechanism already there. Appoint these ambassadors, 9 ambassadors, everybody is there. A lot of military attaches are also with the embassies. Put that as a task force based in Yangon to act on behalf of ASEAN, to engage all the parties. So that's another possibility. So again, let's not be fixated on this one thing. And of course, I think General Myanmar Online is sitting comfortably. He's saying that, hey, look, you guys work it out. Who you want to be special envoy, and I'm willing to work with him. And he's worked with, and Myanmar has worked with those tens of envoys and emissaries in the past, and they've run circles around them. So they're not worried about who's going to come or not come and all that. So we cannot put everything on the shoulders of that, hopeful person being named or a group of people being named. Good if they are there. Good. They'll go in. But again, I'm worried that they will not be able to deliver and precious time will be lost. So again, at this moment, right away, I think we get ourselves behind this idea, the proposals emanating from Dr. Emma Eli, that let's do it, patchwork. Okay, let's just do it. It's a Nike approach. Nike, the motto, just do it. So everybody going in. That would be better than NATO. Do a Nike, and open the doors, open the channels, especially I think on the Thai border. Let's get. I'm asking some of the Western countries' embassies here. Let's get an aid convoy running up to the border to Dr. Cynthia on the border and give her all the medical help she needs. Let's get a convoy, go into the KNU, the Karen, and give them whatever they need without even asking anybody.
Equal allocation. So
Yes.
I propose to, in addition to Dr. Gobson's statements, I propose ASEAN Forum may be very limited. If you use the ASEAN Forum, that includes China, Korea, and Japan, maybe another helpful. I think you may consider Mr. Zin, because that includes China, Korea, Japan, and India eventually, but they're not come yet, because they have a little conflict with China now. Otherwise, India will be in ASEAN Forum, regional comprehensive economic cooperation, something like that. I think that might be another viewpoint for you to reconsider. To get better assistance from many different countries. That includes China, Korea, and Japan. And I do agree with Dr. Gomsak's statements and advice that we should have a third party in accordance with the Minister's party to influence China. To influence the government. Otherwise, may come as a native, no action totally as the Dr. said earlier. Now, I have one question again to Mr. Zin. I also asked this to Dr. Sasa, that latest interview. That have you ever tried to seek ASEAN? Ever tried to seek a seat, SEAT seat, in the ASEAN member, in the ASEAN summit and ASEAN ministerial summit, to be more legitimate and to be more acceptable, to be more recognized by the whole world? Is it possible that way? In a sense.
Thank you for your question. We did try to get a seat in the ASEAN, especially the ASEAN Foreign Minister Summit, also meeting, as well as ASEAN Plus meeting. Yes, we try to get a seat. We are that NUG, as we are the government elected and mandated by the people of Myanmar. We want to represent the majority people of Myanmar, and we had sent a letter to the ASEAN that we are ready to participate and we are ready to engage, represent the people of Myanmar. And we also have sent a letter to all the foreign ministries of the ASEAN member state. We have done that like a month ago, and we tried to push for it. We have made offers. We reach out to the different member states as well. Ever since the military has taken over, we first think about the ASEAN, and we want to engage with our neighboring countries to get assistance. So when we first established the committee representing Penang Sudodol by the MPs of Myanmar, and then we are the days of CRPH, as when we found the NUG as foreign ministry of NUG, as well as our prime minister, editor president, they all have reached out to the ASEAN in different ways. We have tried that.
Really?
Right. Mr. Deficit.
Yes.
Can I ask Mr. Marwan? He follows the things very closely here on the ground.
That's what I was going to come to Mr. Marwan about the updating ASEAN Ministerial meeting. What do you think it's going to look like? How do you think it's going to end up? Please. Thanks, Dr. Kapsa.
Is that the question? Could Kapsa
Yes.
also?
Yes.
Well, anything you would like to add, ASEAN, China, and all that, because you also have a South Asian perspective from your side, yeah.
Good. Yes.
No, I think one of the positive developments of this discussion was to learn from the NUG, from the foreign minister, that they are in regular discussion and dialogue with China, because this is a mistake that the NLD made during the previous military government. They didn't engage with China. They were completely enthralled with the Western governments. And as a result, that enabled China to gain a greater access into Myanmar. So I think it's one of the good outcomes of this discussion was to learn from the foreign minister of the NUG that they are not only dealing with China, but China is also quietly supplying humanitarian aid to even NLD parliamentarians. And we know that they are supplying humanitarian aid along the border where the Kachin and the Wa and some of the Shan groups are. But that is something to be kept in mind. In terms of humanitarian aid, I think probably Dr. Leslie might also be able to comment on this, but there are concepts called humanitarian corridors that can be established. But at the end of all this, I mean, it's nice to be positive, offer ideas. At the end of the day, General Min Aung Hlaing has to agree to open the door for any of this to happen. And at this point in time, there doesn't seem to be any indication about what bargaining chips people may have to negotiate with him to get him to open the door. I mean, yes, the situation in Myanmar is dire. People are running out of oxygen. We are hearing horrible stories of people dying, people calling desperately for humanitarian assistance. He seems to be cold-blooded enough to accept that these people die. I mean, that seems to be the thinking. But at one point, one hopes that those who are observing Myanmar trying to get inside will identify a chink in his armor that can be exploited and cultivated to start dealing with him where he will feel he needs assistance. Because at this point in time, he has basically fortified himself and the country and is not permitting humanitarian assistance, which is dire, to get inside. I mean, he's the one who will have to determine that. So whether ASEAN can use that approach to get him to at least engage as humanitarian would be useful.
Well,
who do you think can talk to Myanmar to say yes to an open door policy?
Well, I think the problem ASEAN has, it does not have a leader of stature who can rise up to the occasion and do something. For instance, the president of Indonesia has always been somebody who is more comfortable with domestic affairs than international affairs. Well, Singapore is sort of the brain trust of ASEAN, but they have not risen to the challenge to take the kind of leadership, right? I think when you have Prime Minister Prayut himself, somebody who came to power through a coup, trying to negotiate with Myanmar, it might not look politically correct. So there isn't anybody in the region who can rise up to that occasion to tell Mainland what he needs to do.
So what do you think, to your ideas? Who will be
Can I come in here?
represent a special envoy? Yes. Who will be good to represent special envoy to resolve remedy the crisis?
I think Emma was trying to.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to contest the idea that Ming Online is in control of the whole country. I mean, I think this notion that he has to give permission. I mean, if we consider him legitimate and he is the government, then yes, he has to give permission. But at the same time, there are large parts of the country that are not under Tatmadaw control, and that's precisely why China is able to distribute vaccines through Kachin State, because the KIA has control over that area and has a working relationship with China. So I think we have to stop thinking of Myanmar as a sovereign state that's controlled by one government right now. It's actually a state which is controlled by various actors right now, not just the NUG, not just the Tatmadaw, but other armed groups. I think we can say in Rakhine State, the Arakanese army is a significant partner and stakeholder that can be engaged and is easy and can be approached and is willing to work together with international partners. So we have to stop thinking that the only way for Ambassador Kovsak's Nike let's just do it strategy is for Ming Online to say yes. It isn't the only way. And we've seen Dr. Cynthia is that not only the head of the NUG task force, but she's also deeply connected into the Karen networks, which over thousands of years have been moving through those mountains and across those rivers, and that we know can actually utilize networks through civil society. So I think on humanitarian, we have to be more creative and pragmatic. On the political situation, it's going to take longer, but sooner or later, we have to find a way for governance and structures and systems to be functioning again in Myanmar. At the moment, the Tatmadaw is not just not feeding people and providing medicines and health systems, they're still attacking people. And so these are two different things. If they were just functioning and running the country, okay, maybe we could be considered. But to be attacking people right in this moment seems intolerable within a region, despite what we say about the governments of our region, is actually unprecedented. We don't see that happening in other states in the region where people are starving, who are suffering from COVID, suffering from Delta, and having bombs dropped on their heads and being shot in the street. So we really have to get this in perspective. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mohan.
No, I think I have to clarify. Thanks very much, Emma. I agree that the Tatmadaw is not in control of the country, given that there are large pockets under control of ethnic organizations. But the problem with ASEAN is their political framework is dealing with governments because they themselves have suspect democracies. I mean, the oppositions in most of these countries either are suppressed, they are thrown into jail, non-existent. So the ASEAN country governments themselves walk on eggshells when they try to encourage alternatives to the existing government. So there must, I mean, that is the gray area that needs to be resolved here. Because I agree with you, I mean, humanitarian corridors can be established in areas under the control of the Karen, under the control of the Arakan army, the Chin area close to the Indian border, the WAC, KIA area, certainly. But if you're not going to land at the Yangon International Airport. That's the problem. And I think these governments in Southeast Asia will have to figure out, are they going to step back from recognizing the country that quote unquote, or the government quote unquote, is in territorial control and therefore the state, or are they going to be more creative and say, okay, we need to deal with the bigger question that there's a humanitarian crisis that all of us are going to be engulfed in, to which we have to find a creative diplomatic alternative.
Either to step ahead or step aside. Yeah? Well, it just run into my mind, Dr. Emma. I was thinking about, what do you think about Prime Minister Hun Sen? He has long experience dealing with the many ethnic people. And actually, he resolved the crisis and made Cambodian finding a unity one. What do you think about Hun Sen? Could do something about it in helping Myanmar?
Well, I think that Prime Minister Hun Sen's intervention in April in the ASEAN summit was actually significant in that he talked about the danger of allowing war to take hold. So his leadership...
Look at his a long-time background. Okay.
He spoke about his own experience of war and conflict. And I think that was a helpful perspective to bring into that room, because I think it helped us to be grounded in what we've seen already in our region. We do not want to repeat Cambodia, and we do not want to repeat the previous Myanmar experience. But let's also remember that around Cambodia, ASEAN came together. And ASEAN was very significant in bringing about the Paris Peace Accords in 1991. And in the Jakarta, Jim 1, Jim 2, Singapore, blah, blah, blah. Let's remember our history. And what was the reason that ASEAN did that? Why did Southeast Asian states come together? Is because they didn't want instability and the economic situation of the region affected. So the leadership we saw of Indonesia at the time, Singapore at the time, is what helps us to bring about that significant shift from aerial bombardment to genocide to civil war that Cambodians had been through. But let's also not forget that the Cambodian people were significantly resilient in rebuilding their country over the last 30 years. And I think we can't forget that Myanmar people have that resilience and capacity. Is that they don't need us to solve this for them. They need us to get out of the way, in a way, and to help where we can. But they know how to bring this together. And this is what this new generation is teaching us, is, you know what, all the systems, all this mediation, all this dialogue you brought us over the last 20 years, whatever, thank you very much, but it didn't work out that well for us. So we're going to try and find our way to this. And I think that's something we're also going to have to come to terms with in our region, is the next generation who think differently to most of us about the way preventive diplomacy and good officers and mediation and envoys and all work, because they don't always work in the way that people themselves get benefit. So thank you for bringing Cambodia, because Cambodia is something that we should be drawing on, and precisely why we have a Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies here, because Cambodia can teach us a lot about the way forward. And, of course, Cambodia is utilising vaccines from every country, Japan, China, the United States, and even yesterday, weirdly, the Marshall Islands. So we are vaccinating, and the anticipation is by November 80%. That's what we want to aspire to for Thailand and Myanmar, absolutely. So, yes.
That's why I'm thinking of him. Prime Minister Hun Sen is a long-time war conflict. He could be one of the very helpful gentlemen to try helping the Myanmar crisis to be solved. Well, Minister Sin, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. From what you have heard about our discussion and sharing ideas and thoughts, what do you think? What do you have opinion? What is your opinion about this? And what can you bring to remedy the crisis in Myanmar? Just take whatever you think is workable for Myanmar into your consideration and bring it to solve the crisis in Myanmar and help you be successful. the national unity government NUG, please. Since the time is running out.
Thank you, and thank you for all the invited guests for discussing about Myanmar issue as a regional issue, as well as the potential of the transmission of the pandemic, and looking at from different perspective. Thank you, and it has been a great learning session for me. And so I think this is what politics is about. Politics is not about making finding problems. It's trying to resolve the problems. That's what we are working on for the NUG government also. That if we look at the civil war in Myanmar, if we look at the problem in Myanmar, even before the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic has started, when we started forming CRPH, we engaged with the ethnic organization, with the ethnic stakeholders. We try to realize why is the military coup happen again in 2021. We try to we discuss with them. We try to look at the issue from different perspectives. That the military coup is not successful, even though that the successful is not successful. That we are now working on to remove the military, and we are trying to stop the military dictatorship. And then we are also looking, not only that, we are also looking beyond that military hunter. We are looking for a political situation. For us, if we have worked on and developed a federal democratic charter. It is not a federal democratic charter developed by the NLD. It is an inclusive process. We established national unity, national consultative council. We have the parliamentarians here. We are trying to bring in federalism and legitimacy together. We need to create this kind of platform. We invited ethnic stakeholders. We invited other political parties. We invited the leaders from the generous right committees on the ground. We invite the CDMers. We are there with the parliamentarians. We all talk with that. At the same time, we are having CDM on the ground. People are demonstrating on the ground, and people are being arrested about it. But despite that, we are trying to find a way. How do we move forward? How do we move beyond the military? How do we rebuild our nation? That's our political solution. Since Myanmar gained independence, 1948, military supremacy has been a big problem for us. Military is the biggest. That we have to change this political discourse. The military is essential. Military must be in the policy. No, we don't do that. Our new generation has very clearly said no to that. If you look at it, those who are demonstrating on the ground, some of them are not even of the age to vote in the last election. They said this is too much for us, and then we know that this military supremacy is the discourse that is disturbing our way of life, our beliefs. So new generation is totally different. It's not like 18th generation. It's like our generation or 98, 96 generation. This 21st century generation. They said we want. This is a government, a public government we have voted for, and you cannot get rid of our government like that. That's the 21st century politics, and that's the 21st century generation who are trying to. And we need to use that approach that is different from our time because of the problem in Myanmar started since 1940, late 1940s. So we are seeing unprecedented solidarity in Myanmar with the different stakeholders, with the Democrats, with the different political ideology, different ethnic groups, different political institutions, and the people of different generations. They are working together. That's why they remain committed. That's why they say that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, all the military has now offered to give vaccination to the common people. They are saying no to the military because they don't want to support the military, and that's why we are saying we need third party to come in as a way to address the pandemic situation, because our conflict crisis, our political crisis in Myanmar is a long-term crisis. We know the solution. We have abolished in 2008 the military constitution. We are now working on the basic principles to develop a federal constitution together with the inclusion, with the all-inclusiveness, where we are trying to bring in all different stakeholders work together, and we need to have the sovereignty. The sovereignty will be in the public government elected by the people, and that the military will be under the democratic civilian control, and that's the solution, and that's the goal we are going for. And this is not just a political speech. That's the political majority. That's the political commitment, and that's the cause that people believe in Myanmar.
Well, every step it takes, I hope it will be very successful. And if the situation gets better in Myanmar, so the rest of the ASEAN member will be peaceful as well. And we all must help, and one way or the other, to help Myanmar crisis to bring over peace and security within Myanmar, and will affect the rest of the ASEAN member. There's no question, there's no doubt about that. And I hope that whatever we have discussed today, if whatever is useful, please bring it to your situation and try to solve such crisis, to end up crisis and come to aiding for peace and security for the Myanmar citizens and the Myanmar country. I appreciate Minister Singh to join us today, and we hope we see you next time. And have a wonderful day, and have a great day, and have a very successful careers. Whatever you wish, it will come true. Thank you very much once again. Minister Singh, you're still with us, right? What about the rest of you? You would like to say a few words, starting with Dr. Emma, Mr. Marwan, and former Ambassador Kopsa, please.
So I think I need to say that it takes leadership. We have to work in partnership, and we keep people at the center of everything we do. And right now, the most important thing is that we vaccinate the people of Myanmar and the people of Thailand, because people deserve nothing less, and it's doable. It's easy to do, but we just have to work together and move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's rather very heartbreaking to see what's been going on in Myanmar since the February coup.
By the way, don't forget to update the election of the special envoys at this ministerial meeting for us to learn about. Thank you.
Yes. So I think it's very heartbreaking to see what's happening here, because it basically is rolling back the hope of democracy that emerged since 2011. Although that was a quasi-democracy, it was a pro-military government, at least during the NLD years, things looked promising. But despite that gloom, the gloom since February, what is uplifting is the groundswell of anti-military anger, which is something that clearly this military institution led by Min Aung Hlaing didn't anticipate. And that basically tells me, as a journalist who covers the region, that it was just bad intelligence on his part, unable to read the ground, unable to know the political pulse of the people. And of course, the power of social media and this online generation. So there is hope that this generation, as the minister said, is not prepared to accept the politics of military supremacy that has been the curse of Myanmar politics since the coup of General Ne Win in 1962. So one hopes that the fear of COVID spreading around the country may push the generals on the back foot. I'm optimistic here. But can never be optimistic with the generals. But maybe the entry point would be COVID, because the need for a special envoy emerged in April when everybody was concerned about the coup, right? Then we had the bloodshed. Everybody was concerned about the way in which that there's the need to contain the bloodshed. But now the special envoy has to deal with COVID. And I'm not sure whether very soon there'll be a fourth issue for a special envoy to deal with. So the Myanmar crisis is escalating rapidly, and it's going to be, it is, as Emma mentioned, it's an ASEAN problem. And countries on the sidelines, from India on the eastern end, and Bangladesh to China, India and Bangladesh on the western end, and China on the eastern end, and Thailand below, have to take what's happening in Myanmar more seriously than simply waiting for a special envoy.
Right. So we must join hands and work out together to get things done, to get things over with, particularly Myanmar's political unrest. And I agree with you that vaccination, complete vaccination, fully doses to every single individual citizens is a final answer to end up the pandemic COVID-19. I think this is the fact that never goes wrong, and the truth to look after the whole peoples of the world. Well, Mr. Gopsak, I'm sorry, Ambassador Gopsak, please.
Mr. is okay. Well, yeah.
Okay, I can call you minister, no problem. Please.
No. Okay. Okay. So, well, I think it's useful discussion. I hope because it's on, it will be forever on YouTube and Facebook Live under the Merit TV. So it's available for everybody for eternity even. So I hope one day, even the young people that Minister Sin Maung had referred to will look back and say, perhaps, yes, some of the older people did understand us. They did give us some hope. Because I can say perhaps that within ASEAN itself, for example, if you look at the young generation of Thailand, if one day they were to make a decision, Minister Sin Maung, they will be with the young generation of Myanmar. And then things could change. That could be the catalyst for change. We don't need to look at one individual, one hero, one leader to come in on a white horse or whatever. I think we now look at a whole generation. As Marwan says, this upflow, outpouring, percolating in society through the social media. I think that provides the hope for the future. It could be a long process, but it's not completely done because these within ASEAN, we can even say, when you ask what could happen, it seems as if it's all solidified, fossilized even, and nothing moves. But yes, let's see one day a young generation of Thailand were to be decision makers. That's one hope. Immediately, I think, even more than that, I think if ASEAN next week were to say, hey, look, we tried our best. How about other approaches? Of course, UNSG, UN Secretary General, Security Council, the patchwork approach of Dr. Eva, certainly immediate humanitarian crisis. But even beyond that, would somebody, one country, step out and be like that young boy who pointed and said, the emperor has no clothes? And that one country says, I don't have to act as an ASEAN collectively. I will recognize the NUG. I will deal with the NUG. Just one country to step up and say that. It doesn't have to be an ASEAN consensus, ASEAN position, ASEAN communique. Would that happen? Would somebody be brave enough? I think we have to encourage that. We have to say, look, this is the time to make a decision, to step up, to step forward now, because this could help to bring the suffering to an end in shorter space of time.
Absolutely. Well, this is a good conclusion by Ambassador Gopsak. I think want to step ahead and say that we will go with the NUG, National Unity Government, to be legitimate in the world arena. I think because this is the world of the full democracies, full liberty. And so NUG could be a good representatives for the full democracies. So I appreciate all of you to participate in this program on World TV. And I hope that we will be invite you coming back again sooner or later. And I do appreciate all of you for your precious times. Thanks once again. Those who has been watching us missed some of the certain session. Please join, please subscribe and share, and you will see the whole things. Because we try to make it quite useful to all of you, to all the viewers, about the Myanmar crisis. And all things we have put on the Mirror TV will be useful and will be beneficial to the viewers and to subscribers. Thank you very much once again. Goodbye for now. Bye-bye. You all have a good day. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank you.
ที่สุดขึ้นมาเลยที่สุดขึ้นมา
สวัสดีครับ
เม่งกันละบาท
Appreciate it.
B คอนโดชีวิตทันสมัยมีสไตล์ในแบบของคุณ B Happy คือความสุขที่อยู่รอบตัวคุณ B Smart เป็นสไตล์ในแบบคุณ B Healthy อยู่ท่ามกลางความสดชื่นได้ทุกวันราคาเริ่มต้น 1,140,000 บาทสนใจดูรายละเอียดได้ที่ www.abasestate.co.th
ไม่มีวิกฤตไหนที่คนไทยเอาชนะไม่ได้เพราะคนไทยสร้างสรรค์ไม่ว่าจะเกิดอะไรขึ้นคนไทยก็ยังยิ้มสู้เพราะความใจสู้ของคนไทยเป็นกำลังใจให้กลุ่มปตท.มุ่งมั่นคิดเพื่ออนาคตและทำสิ่งที่ดีที่สุดเพื่อคนไทย
เหนื่อยหนาวก็ไม่ใช่ทำไมอากาศดีแต่โชคยังดีมีลีโอติดตู้เย็นมีตู้เย็นลีโอติดตู้เย็นแจกฟรีลำโพงแม่เหล็กสุดชิลติดตู้เย็นจากลีโอร่วมสนุกได้จนถึงวันที่ 31 ธันวาคม 2564 เท่านั้นมีโซดาลีโอติดตู้เย็นไว้ชิลทุกวันความชิลติดตู้เย็นรวมกันมันกว่าโซดาลีโอ
คำว่าดีที่สุดหยุดเขาไม่ได้ New Fortuner Legender สัญลักษณ์แห่งความสำเร็จสัมผัสและทดลองขับวันนี้ที่โชว์รูมโตโยต้าทั่วประเทศ
อังคารที่ 3 สิงหาคม 15 นาฬิกา